All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you can see my face or hear my voice, you know it is time once again for the worst 120 minutes or so in all of sports. That's right, I'm Mike, and this is the Too Many Guys Soccer Show. I'm joined, as always, by my faithful partner in all things broadcasting, Producer Stead. Producer Stead, how goes it this week?
Going pretty good. Considering that this is always kind of like a little bit of a downtime because all the leagues are done, the club season's over, and this one's particularly challenging because we should be gearing up for a big major international tournament right now. That's what we should be doing. It's summer of 2022. We should be looking at these Nations League games or looking at past qualifiers and saying, this is what's coming, start talking about the upcoming World Cup. But sadly, it's not. And now we have to try and speculate on games that are happening right now at the level of importance, which we'll do successfully. But I turned on the TV over the weekend as I got home and I had a little bit of time and I was like, I forgot. There's no more games to watch. So, that part was kind of sad. But, got some other sports that'll keep me entertained. But overall, can't complain too much. Things are going all right. How you doing, my friend?
It's good. I mean, it was nice to have football back in some form or fashion this weekend. There were a lot of international games. How much you want to pay attention to them and how much stock you put into them is up to you. And we will talk about it. There were some good storylines, which we're going to get into as we go through this evening. And it was nice to have something back, kind of that soft cushion to take the edge off.
Yeah.
But I dig what you're saying. Like, we should be getting ready for a World Cup. We should be getting ready for a major tournament. We should be dusting off the international jerseys for a summer tournament. But we're not. And the fact that we're not going to get one this season, and we're not going to get one next summer because it's going to come in the middle of fall.
Right.
Kind of a bummer. I'm not sure how I'm going to adjust to having a World Cup in November.
Yeah.
When I just can't schedule my entire day around what games to watch and who to talk to and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And, other, stupid necessities like work.
I know. Like, what is that all about? You got to be kidding me.
You want me to work during the World Cup?
For the World Cup? They should adjust summer vacation just for that alone.
I'm just thinking I should get at least 10 extra vacation days this year just to take off for the World Cup.
Absolutely.
I don't need every day off, but just every other one.
Yeah, you got to be kidding me. You can't do that. I mean, that was the perk of getting involved in this industry, was the fact that you had your summers off, so you knew you could go sit at the bar at 7:30 in the morning and leave at 6:30 in the afternoon and know you got to watch a slew of World Cup games and know you're going to be right back there the next day. Like, those group stage games are fantastic. There's nothing better than group stage World Cup for good party drinking at the bar, man. It's the best.
It's like the first 2 days of the NCAA tournament, but for a month.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I mean, I think the World Cup itself gets a little boring when you get to the championship rounds because there's only 3 games left. And you're like, man, the fun's over. Yeah. I only have an excuse to go out for 2 hours now.
It's like trying to suck that last sip out of a really good beer. So I went out tonight. It was graduation, so I went to go see the kids graduate, and then went out with one of the families. We went down to this a steakhouse, and we had a good. While I was down there before they came, I was sitting at the bar. They had delirium tremens on tap.
I never had that.
Very good, very decadent, thick Belgian beer. It's all the Belgian that you get. I can only really do like one because it's just so,
Yeah.
but it was nice to just, with my brandy snifter looking thing, have a
Yeah.
beer and watch a little bit of highlights, France from Croatia, and think about and bask in the warmth that was June.
Yeah.
And remember times where this could have been the end of my day, having watched 2-3 games.
Yeah.
And enjoyed myself.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with those Belgian beers, though, man. I spent a weekend in Bruges, I think. I remember having a fabulous time in Bruges. That's pretty much the extent of what I remember. Man, those beers are no joke. No joke.
The choir is piping in on the chat we used for the show, telling me that I need to watch out. Yes, gentlemen, I had one. It was not going to go any further than that.
Yeah, I had 3. I was like, whoa.
I needed to be
obvious I was an American there, man.
Needed to be something that resembled coherent for this show.
Yeah.
But we got a good group tonight.
Yeah. Good little round table going on tonight. Absolutely.
We're going to start off. We're going to talk a little bit about the I don't want to call it a tri-nation because that really wasn't what it was. This eliminator, this 3-team eliminator that we had going on this weekend for the final spot from Europe in the World Cup. It started off with Scotland and the Ukraine. Ukraine won pretty handily, but they were defeated 1-0 on an own goal on Sunday. So you can pretty much guess who we got on to start off the show. Let's welcome in our not so happy Scotsman, Cam. Yeah, it was a bad weekend, wasn't it, Cam?
Not my favorite weekend, but also not the worst. I will say that.
Yeah. And then if we're going to talk about the Ukraine, we can't do it without Professor Matt. How goes it, my good friend?
It goes well. How are we?
We are doing good. And Chelsea Mike.
Way to come in on cue, guys. That's fantastic. It looks like we planned that.
we're slightly getting more professional.
Getting better at this, man. We just need another lecture series from Professor Matt, and it's some more lower league stuff from Chelsea Mike, man. We're good to go.
But it's only 10 minutes into the show, so I'm confident in our ability to mess this up.
Oh, we always figure it out. Absolutely.
We will figure out a way to sneak.
We don't need G to mess this up.
Just like our good friends came from north of the border, we will figure out a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, come hell or high water.
That's where the Nations League comes into play for me.
All right. It was a story of emotion. It was, Cinderella, all of that sort of stuff. Didn't have the happy ending that we thought it might, but hey, at least midweek, it got off to a good start. Gentlemen, we talked about it last week. Matt, Mike, you said Ukraine was going to come out. They've had time, the emotion. I think a lot of that carried them through. Cam, unfortunately, Scotland decided to play world ambassadors and decided to save their best game for another day. Unfortunately, they needed it that day, and it ended up 3-1 Ukraine. We'll start with the positive side of this. Matt, talk to us about what happened on the field before we get into the sort of global ramifications of this. How did Ukraine come up with that performance?
You mentioned emotion. I think that played a lot into it. But also, with the amount of time off this could go one of two ways. They could be an incredibly rusty squad, but it was the exact opposite. And I think the manager, Alexander Petrakov, deserves a lot of credit there, especially with the way I think he managed the minutes of the domestic based guys who haven't played any meaningful football in months. In regards to the first match, and I said it last week, with all of the handicaps involved, I think Ukraine is actually that much better than Scotland, all things considered, particularly in the midfield. We saw that. But yeah, no, an immense amount of credit goes to the coaching staff and to the players for staying in shape and staying, committed. Was there a bit of burnout? Yeah, maybe in the second half of the Wales match, and I'm sure we'll touch upon that. But whatever kind of training regimen they've had in Romania and Slovenia, and these friendlies, as silly as sort of hey, it's Ukraine versus Dortmund's B team. Well, it's still football. They still came out prepared. So an immense amount of credit to the Ukrainian FA and to the entire staff.
Mike, what did you see in that Scotland game from the Ukraine that made them as successful as they were?
Well, I mean, definitely emotions. It's you can't underplay how much you could tell that game meant not just for them, but for their country. I think really it kind of showed like Scotland a little bit vulnerable at the back, right? Like Yarmolenko's first goal, right over the top, right in. I mean, that's almost like a U10 play, just kind of kick it long and get it to the guy who's up there. And to Yarmolenko's credit, he brought it in and managed to slot in a goal. And then Yaremchuk on his goal too. I mean, they were building pressure right there at the start of the second half. But that pressure kind of it seemed like it kept building. It kept coming in waves, Ukraine over and over and over again. I mean, that was definitely a team that was fired up to be on the pitch. And I think they're underrated in their skill. I mean, these are a lot of guys who you cheer for or against on your weekends, in addition to the domestic players. So I think they brought their talent to bear. They had all the emotion. And again, like Professor Mount was saying, I think they're underrated in their skill.
Cam, Scotland got through qualifying playing any number of players out of position. You've got Scott McTominay playing as a center back. He's a midfielder. You've got the likes of Andy Robertson playing as ostensibly a wing back. He's probably best utilized as a left back. Che Adams, Lyndon Dykes, who may be better as wingers or solitary strikers playing as a striker tandem. It was a long season. A lot of things just seemed to catch up to Scotland all at one time.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely accurate. And I do want to preface by saying that even though Scotland played as terribly as they did, Ukraine didn't play really well because Scotland played terribly. Ukraine played really well because they played really good football. And that's what I noticed throughout the game. Scotland clearly had some major issues with that back line. Hickey, Hanley, and Cooper were they were non-existent in their defensive positions. It looked like it was their second or third time ever playing a position like that. But I think someone already mentioned it. I mean, the counterattacks that Ukraine were pulling on us were just slipping right through our midfield, right through our back line. Things got adjusted a little bit at halftime. But Scotland there was no chemistry between any of the Scottish players, whereas Ukraine had that chemistry. And, I don't want to, hit this on the head too much more, but again, that emotional aspect, I think could have helped bring these players together a little bit during their training sessions, these friendlies that Matt talked about. They just looked like a really world-class put together team. against a team of, like U21s, from the perspective of Scotland. We were not there. Che Adams and Lyndon Dykes could not work together at all. Change was made with Ryan Christie coming in to support Che Adams, and that started to play off a little bit better, but by that point in time, it was just too late. And I think Ukraine had already gotten in the groove by the second half. And, again, Ukraine just looked like a really, really enjoyable team to watch play football, whereas Scotland just did not. It was not pretty to watch.
Okay, so this is a much easier question for you, Cam, than it's going to be for either Professor Matt or Mike. It was a qualification campaign that ended with Scotland having a chance to go to their first World Cup in 9,876 years.
I think since 98. I think.
98.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna
yeah.
say, don't hurt me that bad.
They've qualified for the Euros. They'll probably do it again. With the World Cup expanding in 2026, they'll likely put themselves, if they can keep this together, in position to qualify to an expanded World Cup. Where do Scotland go from this defeat? Because this was a not great ending to what otherwise had to be regarded as a pretty successful qualifying campaign, something to build upon. How can Scotland improve from this point so that basically they're not in this situation again, coming to another major international tournament, and they can be, a group that teams don't necessarily want to play when they see them?
Yes, I think that's a really good question. I mean, looking at Steve Clark's run up to this game, he had 7 wins, 2 ties, and 1 defeat. One of those wins was against Denmark, and the defeat they had was a win against Denmark away, which, I mean, as we've seen, is not always the easiest game. But, for the longest time in international football, in terms of Scotland, that is one of the better records that I can remember. And I think even my dad says that's one of the better kind of international records he's seen from a Scotland manager, especially one that has never run a national team, has never run a big team. Stephen Clark ran Killie. That was his kind of claim to fame. So, I think there are people calling for his head at this point in time. I think that's the incorrect move. I think I'm really excited to see him play in the Nations League. And let's not forget as well, we're playing Ukraine twice again in the Nations League. So it'll be interesting to see from a managerial perspective how he adjusts his tactics for what he saw in that first game, and with the same kind of squad that he's most likely going to use for the most part. So, I think we're playing teams like Ireland, Ukraine, and Armenia, I think, in our group. So, Ireland and Ukraine, I think, are going to be kind of our big hitters. Armenia, we'll see how we play against them. They did beat Ireland in the first Nations League game, which is decently impressive. So, I think my kind of way forward from here is let's see how Steve Clark does throughout the rest of this Nations League campaign. I think he's done a really solid job so far. And I kind of would like to see him progress a little bit more and get a handle on the team. And, I think a big marker will be how he does against Ukraine.
So that blessing and a curse. Scotland are playing Ireland next Saturday in the Nations League. Tell me this isn't one that you want to see.
Yeah, I guess, but
Just
still,
for the fun of it.
yeah. But I Ireland didn't qualify. Scotland misses out. There's probably a fair amount of letdown. I can easily see this being a game where the two sides agree not to hurt anybody, and it turns into just sort of a kickabout. I could easily see that happening. And, I'm sorry. I can't. Nations League is it's still just Nations League. I'm sorry. It's still kind of Bush League to me. I just can't get excited. And maybe it's because I was raised in CONCACAF. And right now, I think Bonaire is playing Curacao for the Nations League games. It's just, it's hard, especially when you're seeing you just had a qualifying tournament wrap up. You just had it end. And I just feel like they're shoving this Nations League down our throats, and it's just not something that I'm finding very compelling. And I don't even know when the championships are crowned and what it means. Like, well, what do they win? Do they get this? Do they get an easier path to qualify? Do they qualify for something? Do they get into the Euro? I don't know, and I haven't
Nobody
necessarily
knows.
but yeah, so I think I would almost enjoy it more if it was a friendly, because you would see. I mean, maybe hopefully they'll treat it as a friendly, so maybe you can see more of the players that aren't in necessarily the starting 11. See some of the guys that are playing for some of the smaller clubs locally. I mean, that might be kind of fun because those guys tend to play with a little bit more heart for these types of games because that's their chance to get some exposure. But
I gotta say I disagree with that.
I hope you do, because
I
remember,
really do.
look, you got to, but Cam, you have to understand something. In a regional tournament, if you're a North American soccer fan, there are 2 games that matter. Used to be there's 1, now there's 2. For us, it's US Mexico and US Canada. That's about it. Occasionally, Jamaica tries to make some things seem a little interesting. Honduras will play around. Costa Rica will have a once in a generation player, as in Keylor Navas.
Yeah.
But other than that, international games really are not that exciting for North American fans. They're just not. And as you've seen, our exposure to club soccer has grown exponentially since when I was just in college, where all we had was the occasional international game. When I know that I can watch club soccer and we don't have a region that has compelling international matches that can go on throughout the entire continent, it makes it very difficult for someone like me to see the value in those types of games. That's where I'm coming from. Now, if I was Irish or if I was Scottish, yeah, I could totally see it being a big deal. It might be fun, but you know what? I don't know half the guys on the team anyway. I know the Scotland team because a lot of those guys play in leagues that we pay attention to, but I don't know the Irish league. I'm like, is Roy Keane still playing? I don't know. You know, and also it's also like a lot of like Scotland doesn't seem to have this issue, but you'll see lots of players who qualify for Ireland. And this happens with the US team a lot, where if they can't play for the country where they could potentially play for, then they'll just play for Ireland. And we've seen that happen with the United States quite a bit. If Serginho Dest knew he could start for the Netherlands, there's no way he'd be playing for the United States. We all know that.
Right. But I will push back slightly a little bit on that. Say it was England, Scotland. You as a footballing man, would you find that a little more interesting?
For a Nations League game?
Say it was a Nations League.
I wouldn't.
Really?
No.
Really?
I think I get what he's saying about the competition, because this is a fabricated competition.
Yeah.
It's not a World Cup qualifier. It's not a Euro qualifier. It's this nation.
It's not a friendly either. Because a friendly, I like friendlies. I do. I like those games. But for some reason, this Nations League thing just I don't get this.
I think the thing about it is the competition's a bit put on. We haven't yet figured out what to make of it.
Yeah.
We've seen Scotland use it to their advantage to be able to play playoff games for both the World Cup and the Euros. And it actually has more of a benefit for the teams in lower divisions who now have an extra avenue to qualify for the World Cup or the Euros. I think it's a great thing to give some of these smaller teams, as you and I have talked about, San Marinos, the Gibraltars, the
Falkland Islands,
the Falkland Islands, these teams that get into the Andorra, actual competitive matches where they're playing teams about their size, where they can be competitive in it. And so for them, but my comment about the Ireland Scotland match, which I will find entertaining because I think that Ireland-Scotland's a fun match to watch whenever they play, whatever they play, friendly, Nations League, World Cup, qualifier, World Cup, anything. I just think that's an entertaining game to watch. But it's also a trick question because you can't watch it. Unless you have whatever weird network. It's yet another game that's going to be on here that doesn't have a good. So all the major broadcast networks, Fox, ESPN, have basically taken a punt on this Nations League too. Sure. And Fox isn't streaming. Who owns the rights isn't streaming or broadcasting most of them. They're sloughing them off on Fubo TV and some other platform. and saying, here, you wasted time producing this and broadcasting it because I'm not going to, which means that even if I did want to stream Ireland, Scotland this Saturday morning, I can't because I probably can't find it anywhere. So it was a moot point to begin with. I get your feelings on the Nations League when you look at it from the pot A. Ostensibly they're trying to tell you this is another international tournament to play for, but it's really not. And then you have to deal with and I get what you're both saying, you have to deal with the varying degrees to how seriously teams are going to take this, because it's somewhere in between a friendly and an actual qualifier, which, if I'm being honest, I think is actually an area of competitiveness that does not need to exist.
Right. The clubs now, I think the FIFA wanted to compel the clubs to send the players back for the friendlies, but well, do they really want to? They kind of have to. It's put into a gray area that, you're right, just doesn't really need to exist. Why don't we just have a year of non-competitive matches?
Well, that was the problem. Well, they felt like they were having these non-competitive matches and nobody was paying attention. Players didn't want to go because they were non-competitive friendlies. Teams didn't want to release them, and teams were suffering in the ratings. So FIFA decided to put together a weird tournament with this format to try and get teams competitive matches. The other problem was, you have teams that we just mentioned, like Andorra, like the Faroe Islands, like Gibraltar, like these minnows, who the only time they get to play competitive matches is in qualifying, when they're so far down the totem pole that their whole entire mission in life is to get tonked by everybody else. It has to be humiliating if you're it has to be humiliating. It can't be good for the development of the sport in the country when the only time you see your team play anything that resembles a competitive match, they're losing 11-0. And in these friendly windows, these minnows, the Faroe Islands, Andorra, these countries, they're not getting matches scheduled because who wants to schedule them? Like, I can't tell anything if I'm Steve Clark, if I'm Gareth Southgate. What do I learn from a friendly match against Andorra? You can't tell anything about it. The only thing that you can learn is bad, right? So if we go out and we only win 3-0 against Gibraltar and we're England, that's bad. If I go out and a couple of my guys get hurt, that's bad. If we win 7-0, we met expectations. There's no amount that you can learn, so why schedule them, right? So it was an effort to get somebody, but I think that there should be an exemption for teams that reach a certain level, because what I don't need to see is the likes of, and we'll talk about it a little bit later on. It's fun. I enjoy it, but I don't know how seriously either Spain or Portugal were taking that game earlier this week. I don't know how seriously France was taking that game that they drew with Croatia and their loss to Denmark. Denmark had fun. Hey, it was a big win, and we'll talk about for Netherlands over Belgium. I'm sure that France is ruining the fact that they lost both Kylian Mbappe and Raphael Varane to injury in this match against Denmark. And we're sitting here saying it kind of exists in this gray area where, we don't know what the value of the trophy is that we're competing for, but we also don't want to lose, but we don't want to win. So this gray area, and I think that plays a lot into it. But getting back to what we were talking about, let's
Still love Scottish football, though, Cam. Still love it.
Still love Scottish football.
Still love it.
Cheers. Let's move back and advance to Sunday.
I'm sorry. 5 minutes ago, you were USMNT, Rob. Now we are
Peruvian Tito. Mhm.
Oh, that's great.
Mm.
That's great. All right, I'm
Yeah.
muting myself. I'm sorry.
The name changes on the Zoom call are great. Apparently, Mike thinks he's the pretty one.
I mean, I've been going by the pretty one on the lower league report for months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Doesn't translate when you're on the big leagues, man. Doesn't. You can be the pretty one when you're by yourself. Now you're in polite company. Not working for you. But that's all right, Mike. You have a face made for radio. Let's talk about what happened on Sunday. It comes down to a Yarmolenko own goal from a Gareth Bale set piece. Wayne Hennessy stands on his head, and the Ukrainian dream dies. Matt, I thought this was a game where Ukraine, again, were the better team. Just Wayne Hennessy had one of those games that you dream about.
Yeah, we outplayed. I think we thoroughly outplayed them. But Hennessy was great on the day. Not Courtois great. The commentary in that match was dreadful. But he was excellent. I thought Wales defended well. And that's the thing. You gotta eat your food. We did not eat our food. And yeah, the own goal was unfortunate. I mean, I understand why Yarmolenko did what he did, especially when you have the goalkeeper that we have in Bushen, who can be a bit adventurous. But oddly enough, I think the goalkeeper probably had that under control. It's sad, but like I said, the fact that we were able to play these matches, period, I think is the big thing. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more that there's more matches ahead rather unexpectedly. But yeah, I mean, it's never a good feeling when you clearly are the better team on the day and you go down. But hey, is what it is.
I mean,
Mike-
I just kind of want to disagree with Professor Matt a little bit here. I don't really know why Yarmolenko was doing that. I mean, it's kind of rule number one as a defender is don't head the ball backwards on a set piece. It's like, I mean, I know these guys are pros and they probably have way better coaching than my high school level coaching, but it was never head the ball towards your own goal on a free kick. And yeah, Bouchon made that Scotland game a little bit more adventurous than it needed to be. I don't know, maybe it was nerves with him, the pressure of a nation. But while we're talking about the pressure of a nation, I think that the emotional level was high again for Ukraine, and you definitely saw that out there. And especially at the end when they did succumb to defeat, I mean, you saw those guys, their hearts were broken. And it was hard to watch. But the Welsh nation, the last time the Welsh were in the World Cup finals, they gave up Pele's first goal.
Yeah.
So there wasn't, I mean, I know we're thinking about it in terms of the scope of world events and whatever. The Welsh haven't been to the World Cup final in 64 years. I mean, Christian Bale, it's his last time probably going for this. Or Gareth Bale. Yeah, Christian Bale acts in movies. Gareth Bale is a footballer. And I saw it argued this week, greatest British footballer of all time. You won't talk that out.
Talk about a hot take, but no.
I'm not leveling that hot take, but the emotions were high for Wales, and they were playing that way too. Go on, Matt.
I think another big part of that was Ukraine was able to silence the Scottish crowd early.
Right.
we were not able to do that. And, you know, I think I even said in the group chat, oh, they're going all Zulu now because that song that they sing in Zulu is just resonating going around the stadium. And it's like, yeah, God damn it. Yeah, we didn't shut them up. And you can't take that away. And you're right. It's not just Wales haven't been there since 1950s.
Right. And it's not like the Ukraine. It's well, sorry. Sorry.
It's going back to the Bale thing. This is the last rodeo for easily their most iconic player. And I mean, his teammates knew that, the crowd knew that.
It's the last rodeo for probably two of their most iconic players of this generation.
Yeah, well,
Him and Aaron Ramsey,
Ramsey, yeah.
is probably the, and you know, you're
Ramsey
talking
will be
about,
lucky to. I mean, Ramsey's lucky that he gets this one last shot because he's been riddled with injuries for quite a while now. And you know, I will always have a special spot for Aaron Ramsey as an Arsenal fan. But yeah, this is definitely their last rodeo. Definitely.
but when you look at the fact, like Ryan Giggs couldn't do this,
No.
and the
And
litany of
I consider
great-
Ryan Giggs the best Welsh player. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I think Wales consider Ryan Giggs the best Welsh player, and I know there are umpteen million issues going on with Ryan Giggs right now, legal issues, and so, which is why you have not seen me put up a Ryan Giggs jersey
Mhm.
in quite a while.
which is
But-
also why you're not hearing them talk about him much with Wales success.
Yes, but I will say on the football field, he was probably once in a generation. Gareth Bale, Aaron Ramsey, you know, outside of this, and we'll talk with Byron Robb, U.S. men's national team Rob, Peruvian Tito. I don't know what his name will be by the time we get to him. About, you know, how this looks for the U.S. men's national team that will now need to play Wales. But yes, gentlemen, you are 100% right. Let's not forget the fact that despite that while they may not have the geopolitical issues that the Ukraine have at the moment, as a footballing mad nation, this is a team that has not been there in 64 years, right? You know, 68 years being the last time that they qualified for a World Cup. Generations of Welsh fans have never gotten a chance to see their team play under their flag in the Premier tournament. So, full credit, it is Wales that go through. Wales go through, and now we have to look at this and talk about the possibility of, is this group the group of death? Because according to FIFA's rankings, you have the 5th, the 12th, I believe the 18th and 22nd ranked teams in the world, in England, the US, Wales, and Iran. We're not 100% sure. We will poo-poo the FIFA World Rankings on the show all the time, as you know, we don't know how accurate that measure is. You know, is this team really the toughest? You know, this group, when I look at it, doesn't seem any harder than the group that the US was in last time, where we had Ghana, Portugal, and the eventual World Cup champions in Germany when we were in Brazil. But, you know, hey, England are England. We don't know what they're going to be. We don't know what Wales will be. It is fully possible that Aaron Ramsey and Gareth Bale won't have played a lick of football by the time they get to the World Cup. We don't know who's going to be. We do know that the U.S. men will probably be the record holders for youngest team ever to qualify, this youngest roster ever in a World Cup final. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And Iran. You know, when you have a team that has all of 5 players that play outside of the Iranian league, we don't really know what to make of them. And the toughest games that they played in qualifying were they lost 1 and drew 1 with South Korea. Other than that, the record isn't anything to make hay about, but we don't know. Before we get there, Matt, Mike, let's talk about the bigger picture. What did this 5 days mean for the Ukraine? And where does Ukrainian football go from here? There is no more World Cup dream. But like you said, Matt, there are games to be played. There's Nations League. They've got to rebuild. What is the next step? And we'll talk about how the national team players are going to get along without the Ukrainian league being able to be played, and what that might happen a little bit later on, just as we start to get a little bit more clarity on what that situation may look like. But for right now, what does it mean for the nation, for Ukrainian football, and what are the next steps for this team moving forward?
Let's talk about the political first. This was a wonderful 5 days. It served two things. It served as a much needful distraction from really, really horrible stuff right at your door. But at the same time, and this was sort of hinted at, and full props to Alexander Zinchenko for effectively being the spokesman of this team, future Ukrainian captain, as far as I'm concerned. He said it was almost necessary for Ukraine to qualify for the World Cup to keep the struggle in Ukraine in the minds of the global public. And that may seem weird, especially in the United States, particularly. And I know, Mike, you're up in like the Scranton area, in part of the United States where there's a large Ukrainian American community. But let's be real, we've seen truly traumatic, horrible things get a lot of global attention and a lot of hashtags and things on social media. And then 6, 7, 8 months later become sort of, oh, it was that cause from 5, 6 months ago. I don't think that's going to be the case, but we live it, unfortunately, in a universe where that kind of does become the case. I think not getting to the World Cup is not going to, push this aside, especially because, and I agree with you guys. I have weird feelings about the Nations League, but I'm really glad it's happening this summer because we play the Republic of Ireland on the 8th and Armenia again on the 12th. So, the national team will be playing. As terms the personnel, look, a fair amount of these guys do play in Western Europe. And I think what you saw with this team too, maybe even a couple more. I think I had mentioned, aside the young Dynamo Kiev defender Zabrani, I think he's probably going to be leaving Dynamo in the not too distant future. But we got word today that the Ukrainian Football Federation is intent on going ahead with the Ukrainian Premier League in one way, shape, or form for next year. What that looks like, I don't know. Where these matches are going to be played, it would have to be Western Ukraine, you figure, right? But,
they could be played outside of Ukraine.
Yeah, that's another possibility. There's going to be more info forthcoming. They want this to get kicked off in August, and as crazy as it sounds, it's not completely unprecedented. Both Iraq and Iran for 8 years, as their cities were getting scudded by each other, they played out full seasons. It's not completely unprecedented. We'll see what happens. If they can't go ahead with it, I imagine a lot of the players, it's unfortunate, but a lot of the players who have broke into the national squad may get contracts in the West. But we'll see. I don't think it's unfortunate that they did not get to the World Cup, but I don't think these last 5 days were a failure by any means. It not just in terms of Ukraine itself, but the larger sort of picture and, not global public opinion, because if you're not on Team Ukraine, you really suck. But global public attention, right? So it doesn't become the horrible thing that happens in that weird country that we weren't aware of just a couple months ago on page 2, like so many other sort of conflicts. Mike, I don't know where you
No, I mean, I pretty much agree with almost everything that you said. I mean, I think regardless, the premier talent, like your starting 11, I think they're just going to probably be looking to go elsewhere anyway, because they've been told by their government that your job in this conflict is to provide entertainment to our people. I think they were successful at that, and I think they gave spirits a lift on Wednesday. I know it would have been a huge lift if they had been able to qualify for the World Cup final, because of course Russia were disqualified, so Russia won't be there. But I think just going forward, Ukraine, and I can provide you a little transition into your group of death here. I mean, if I was watching this Wales Ukraine game, I mean, I think Ukraine has a lot in common with the United States. They're an erratic side. They don't always come out and show you the same quality. They're young. Most of their players, I think there's only one player that started who was over the age of 27. So I think they started for themselves, or Bouchan is also one field player, I think was over 27. But I think they put for themselves a good foundation, a good footing for 4 years from now when the World Cup comes to the Western Hemisphere. In terms of what it solved at home, I think it provided minutes of relief. I mean, I saw the pictures of people, I've soldiers watching the game, people in bomb shelters watching the game. I don't think any of us can really ever fully comprehend what sort of morale boost that could be. But I think from a football end, it was very positive for these Ukrainian players to be out there. They showcased their skills and talents for any would-be Western European buyer. So I think in the long term for the Ukrainian Football Federation, it's been a positive.
I think they won over a lot of fans. More than the talent that they showed, it was the heart to be able to go out and compete as effectively as they did, given all the distractions that were happening at home. And I hope that, the ones that are able to move, loan deals, whatever it is, give them an opportunity to play.
There are, by the way, the UEFA questions, the Champions League, the Europa League.
Well, that's the issue that I have. I fully support the Ukrainian FA's decision to press on with the Ukrainian Premier League. And I think that they should find a way to put these games someplace, find a host nation. I worry about the optics of trying to play it anywhere in the Ukraine. There's nothing positive, in my humble opinion, Matt, that can come from trying to stage these games anywhere in the Ukraine.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, the information, this literally just came today, so the information is a bit shady. If the only way that it could possibly work again is in the far west of the country, and even then, it doesn't look right.
I mean, either the optics. So, I mean, if you can find a country that's willing to host it over those times, give them an opportunity to play. Like I said, I think more than the talent, and there is a lot of talent. Don't get me wrong, Matt. You are exactly right. This is a talented midfield. There is a lot of talent and young talent in that Ukrainian team. It was the fighting spirit, the get up, the never say die attitude, that Rocky spirit that we so love over here in the United States, the willingness to go out, compete, leave everything on the field, even though they were not successful. Like the glass slipper at the end of the day did not fit Cinderella's foot. And sometimes that's the pill that we got to swallow in sports. Like, not everything ends up with South Africa after Mandela winning the World Cup. Not everything ends up with, cool runnings and carrying the bobsled across, or Rudy getting carried off the field. Not all sports stories, ladies and gentlemen, have the Disney ending that you want. We saw that. We talked about the fact that the big bad Welsh ruined the Ukrainian party, but let's not forget that's the first time that nation's been there in over 60 years. And to be honest, Ukraine has, and recently.
06 was their last. 06.
Yeah. So, let's not begrudge Wales the credit that they deserve for being able to put this together and actually make it. But it was great, and we need to give credit to the men of the Ukrainian national team. Apparently, my Yarmolenko jersey is on the way, so you should see it hanging in the background in about 2 or 3 months, because who knows how long it's actually going to take to get here from wherever it's coming from. Because guess what, gentlemen? Yarmolenko jerseys aren't easy to find.
I'm not surprised.
Yes.
Is it the Ukrainian national team one, or is it?
Yes, Ukrainian national team one, because I haven't yet figured out which Ukrainian domestic team I want to choose. And again, Matt, when they get ready to start up the Ukrainian Premier League, we will actually have a conversation about what is the appropriate Ukrainian Premier League team to choose under certain circumstances, because I could see myself deciding on one and choosing very, very, very wrong, and find out that I chose the team of the secret police who snatched up bodies in the middle of the night. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not 100% sure that's who I want to recommend. So we will talk more about that when that time comes, and we'll get a good old-fashioned history of the teams that play in the Ukrainian Premier League when that time comes. Until then, we are going to move on and use Mike's segue and welcome in our good friend, Byron Robb.
That's me.
And talk a little bit about this group now that we know who is in it.
So while we're discussing, some of the previous events, I did some math. And if you combine the total rankings of the group which has England, now Wales, Iran, and the USA, it adds up to 49. It's a lot. I mean, sorry, it's probably the smallest amount, smallest number. So if you can consider it the group of death, because it is of epic proportions. I mean, and it's going to be really, really interesting to see how the U.S. matches up with Wales in the first game, because it's you got Wales. Wales plays England their last game, and then you got the USA and England game on Black Friday. So, oh man, it's just going to be. Is it hard? This is a hard group, and if the U.S. make it out of this group in Qatar, then you got to give the whole squad a standing ovation. It's going to be really, really hard.
When you name off the teams, it does not have the cachet or the rivalries or the history of the group from 2014, right? It doesn't bring with it Germany, known quantity. Ghana ousted us from 2 World Cups. Portugal, we know them to be one of the better teams. We beat them once in a World Cup, but they've got Cristiano Ronaldo. Now, I know what that was. We were featured. We ended up going in there with Jurgen Klinsmann into Brazil. We played Ghana the first match. It was a tight one. We get the late John Brooks goal, win the game. It was the tail end of a great Ghana squad. Portugal Cristiano Ronaldo dealing with an injury, not necessarily the strongest Portuguese team. We're able to tie that 1-1. We're already through by the time we lose to Germany in the last group match. That certainly has the cachet.
Yep.
You go back to 2006 in Germany, when it was the Czech Republic, Italy, the eventual world champs, the USA and Ghana, where we finished rock bottom of that group and the tournament. We went in thinking that we were the best team in the world because we were the 9th ranked U.S. men's national team that hadn't lost in however long. But by the way, the Czech Republic was a doggone good team. I think they were 12 at the time, and they had all of 6'9" Pavel Nedved, who absolutely tore up the U.S. that day. They somehow
That's
managed.
Jan Kohler.
Jan Kohler, not Pavel Nedved.
Yeah.
Well, it was Jan Kohler and Pavel Nedved
Of course.
on the same
on the
team,
squad.
but,
Yeah.
yeah, but Nedved
Yeah.
was the Juve striker
Yeah.
who was really, really good. But Jan
Right.
Kohler, you're right, was the
Yeah.
huge one. He was.
Yeah. He made Oguchi Onyewu look small,
Yes.
which is not very easy to do.
Then they came out. They fought back to a 1-1 draw that probably shouldn't have been with Italy, despite going down to like what did it end up 9-10? And lose to Ghana and finish rock bottom. That was the last time that we had the group of death, right? This one isn't going to carry with it that name brand because a lot of people are going to be Wales. They haven't qualified since '68, and all they've got is Aaron Ramsey and Gareth Bale. Iran, we don't know anything about them. And, oh, well, England is England, right? But I do agree with you. Like, this is a really tough group. And we are sending over what will be, if the rosters and things hold, the youngest team in the World Cup. I was looking up average ages of the World Cup teams that had qualified. As of right now, the U.S. has the youngest squad in the World Cup, based on the roster that they fielded throughout qualifiers.
Mhm.
The youngest squad by almost 2 years.
Yeah, so just for age purposes, it based on my estimation of who's going to make the World Cup, right? And not including goalkeepers, because then you might include Sean Johnson as a keeper.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but does not include him here. Walker Zimmerman will be the oldest player at 29.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe Zach Steffen is 27. So that's one. Matt Turner will be 28. And that's it. There's no 30-year-olds here.
They're not going to drag Michael Bradley out of the grave and make him play for the national
Well,
team.
that was what they were saying. Like, there's only been one guy over 30 that has featured for the U.S. men's national team during qualifiers.
Tim Ream.
Tim Ream and John Brooks, and we don't know who
Yeah.
they are. And there's like more than half the team is under the age of 20. Is under the age of 22.
Yeah. Like legislate the players who did not get called up for injuries. All right. So Gino Des, he's 21, will be 22 at the World Cup. Chris Richards is 22. Need another one. Let's take a look at some other ones. I think Giovanni Reina. Not Gio Reyna, Giovanni. It's a strong name. We must use Giovanni. Giovanni Reina is like in his early 30s as well. So like
Giovanni Reina?
Early 20s.
Early 20s.
He's 19. He's not even 20 right now.
I think he'll be 20 by the time the World Cup starts. I think he'll be 20. Yeah.
Yeah,
he'll be
he's
20.
19. He's not even in his 20s.
Exactly. So it's this is young, and like they got here. Like throughout the qualifier, they got here, and so this is a team that has been forced to play big games, big minutes, because the previous generation just stunk it up, and so it's good. And now the question is, will they play like their age, or will they play like the experience that they gathered on this journey to Qatar? That's going to be the big question here, and also who can still stay healthy the whole time as well.
Well, that's the other thing. We don't know who the roster is going to be because there's a lot of time in between now and Qatar. The other issue is that we only have one player on the roster who might make it that has any experience playing in a major international tournament, and that's DeAndre Yedlin, who played in the World Cup in 2016. Other than that, none of them have ever.
And he might not start, by the way. DeAndre Yedlin might not start.
No.
Yeah.
He's back in MLS now, right? He's not playing in
Yeah,
tournament.
he's Inter Miami at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, if he is on the plane, he's the only player that's played at any sort of major, that has any experience being at a major international tournament, let alone starting. Just the only guy that's in a locker room that has any experience starting in a major international tournament. Playing, no disrespect. Again, the coach of Wales came out and he said he views the US and Iran as winnable games. Now, that's being made to be bulletin board material over here. How dare the Wales think that they can beat the US? Are you really scared of Wales? And I mean, do I think that there is a world where Wales can beat us? Absolutely.
Well,
do I think that we can be competitive with them? Do I think that it's a game that if we play what we are capable of, we can beat them? Yeah. Do I think it is in any way, shape, or form going to be a walk? No. Do I think that we need to take them seriously? Yes. Do I think that but for the reasons that we said, this is an extremely young team. It is a team that we are all happy about because it has that P word that we talk about.
Well, look, Wales, yes, they play in UEFA. They play big matches all the time. They have big opposition. And the only time they played the US recently, it was 0-0 in COVID 2020. Right. So it was a friendly and blah, no one really cared, right? But the one thing that we always preach as American fans is that we wanted to see the US players test themselves in the biggest competitions and the biggest leagues in the world. If you do the tail of the tape is the US men's national team, especially on the younger roster, has more players in bigger teams who play in Champions Leagues than Wales do. It's simple. So Wales, yes, it's a winnable game. Yes, it's also a game where you can underestimate the opponent, and the US will smack you to the 0. So if the US can find a number 9.
You just brought up the biggest issue that I was going to bring with this and this whole thing is what teams like Wales and England do very, very well is capitalize on the chances that they make, even when they don't necessarily make them. And once they get what they need, they shut up shop and don't let you do anything. We saw Wales get one. They didn't even have an opportunity. It was an own goal. What we don't see from the US, or we see only sporadically, is the ability to create and finish chances. And we don't have a number 9. That is going to be an issue because while we have guys that can put the ball in the net, whose sole job, Rob, is it going to be to put the ball in the net?
That's hard because, all right, so the US has about 5 options buzzing around. All right, then I'll go through all of them very briefly. And so you got Jesus Ferreira, who can get into position, does the movements, does everything right except for put the ball in the net. Okay. You got Jordan Pefok, who scores a ton of goals for young boys over in the Swiss League, but really doesn't press well and doesn't really score too much for the USA. Okay, you got that. Then you got what's the guy's name from freaking Bremen? Who I forget his name.
Josh Sargent.
Josh Sargent. Yeah, he's been a while since he put on the colors. Okay, so you got you got Sargent over there who, he got relegated. I think he made a move to the Premier League when, I get it. You have to make the move, especially Bremen needed the money. And also you want to collect the EPL check. I get it. But he sort of regressed a little bit. And you got the newest member of the freaking, the number 9 rotation in Haji Wright, who came out of nowhere, who had this journeyman path. He's still young, by the way, but he started youth games with Pulisic many moons ago. Dortmund actually went to go look at a match specifically for Haji Wright and saw Pulisic there, and that's how Pulisic got discovered. He actually started doing good things over in Turkey, and now he's got called up. He scored 1 goal, which was a penalty in these last couple of friendlies, and so he's in the picture. But we don't really know about him either. So it's a freaking musical chairs of strikers over here, and we don't know who it is. And if for all we know, it could be Daryl DK.
That was who I was going to say. Don't forget, DK could still get his
He could sneak
name
in there. Yeah, absolutely.
He could still. But the guy who is probably the best equipped to be number 9, who, if he was able to play number 9 or allowed to play as a central striker, although he's not a natural back to the goal finisher, like a Daryl DK, like a Jordan P. Folk, like a Jesus Ferreira. But he has played there before. And if he was able to play there, even for a little bit, would solve a bunch of problems for us. It's actually Tim Weah.
Yeah, so that's the other thing. So it's a weird problem to have. You have a ton of talent on the field, and you don't know what to do with all of them. You can't play them all. You got Giovanni Reina, you got Pulisic, you got Brendan Aronson, and you got Tim Weah on the wings. You want to get at least 3 of those players playing somehow. So do you put Pulisic in the middle? Do you put Timothy Weah as a number 9? And who do you put Brendan Aronson in the middle as sort of the 10 or the dual 8? So it's really, really tough. And you have not tested Tim Weah in the 9 in a while, because you try to find a more traditional hold-up player number 9, and it hasn't happened. And so Mike, you make an excellent potential suggestion. The question is, how long does Berhalter have to test out Timothy Weah in the number 9? He has 2 Nation League games coming up. I have no idea Timothy Weah is gonna travel with the team. He might be too good and be like, you don't need to play Grenada here. And then you got the September friendlies, and that's it. That's all you get.
Well, my thought was that if there was ever a chance that he was going to try Tim Weah at a number 9, it would have been in the Uruguay match, because it made the most sense. After the Morocco match, where you said in the Morocco match, you're going to try everything. We're going to throw out different defensive pairings. We're going to try Brendan Aronson as more of a central midfielder, which, by the way, he looked good. I thought he offered some things going forward. I didn't think that he was a defensive liability. We know that the US's number 1 midfield would be the Musa McKennie Adams, the MMA midfield. But if you're not going to get that for whatever reason, and we know we're more likely not to get it than to get it, because they have played all of 2 minutes together.
Mm-hmm.
Musa or McKinney, Adams, or something, one of those 4 where you have some combination, 3 of those 4 with Aronson in there, I think seems to work. I thought that if we were going to see Tim Weah as a striker, it would have been in the Uruguay game. Now, I begin to ask the question now, is this a matter of Berhalter being obstinate? Or at this point in time, has he had the conversation with Weah and said, do you feel comfortable playing as a central striker? And Weah said, no, you know what? Look, it's not my game. I feel like it's not going to work for me. It's like let's be honest. It's like playing. It's like asking a guy who plays wing in basketball to go down and bang with the bigs at center.
Go play center. Yeah.
You know, there was a reason why young Kevin Garnett never played center in the NBA, despite the fact that he was 7'2". There's a reason why Kevin Durant doesn't play center in the NBA, despite
He's
being
6'11". Yeah.
7'2". And let's be honest, dude is 7'2".
He's actually listed at 6'9". Says he's 6'11".
Kevin Garnett came into the league at 18. He was listed at 6'10". They said
Yeah.
he grew 4 inches.
Yeah.
The same way with they just don't want to list him at what his real height is, because then
Mhm.
people are like, well, why is he doing? But there's a reason why they don't want to go in the, you know, there is. And if Tim Weah says, don't get me wrong, if Tim Weah says, like, I'm not comfortable doing that, I don't think it's good for my game. I don't think that I can contribute as effectively in that position as you think we do, then he has more of an awareness of his game. And I gotta believe that's where we are right now, because again, if it was going to happen, why didn't it happen on Sunday against Uruguay? You know, why would you save that experiment for a game against Grenada? Like I was talking about earlier with the friendlies against Andorra. The only thing that we can learn from playing Grenada in this CONCACAF Nations League is bad.
Mm-hmm.
There's literally nothing good that we can learn from, because if they win and they win by a big scoreline, that was what we expected to do. If it's tight, what was wrong? And heaven forbid we lose.
Yeah. I mean, we also don't know who's traveling. You know, I don't like it's. Do you want Pulisic to really like be traveling to, you know, to not? I mean, I think they're playing Grenada here at home, but like then you have to go to like El Salvador.
Yeah,
I was going to say we should send him to Grenada.
No, El
Nice.
Salvador. It's
Grenada's
El
nice. I'd be like, I'd go to Grenada. It's nice.
Well, I think the bigger issue with going to Grenada is I worry about the quality of the field that they're going to be playing on. And but that's a home game. I don't know who's going to be traveling to El Salvador. You know, of course, the U.S. is going to try and get a draw down there because they want to be in the Nations League finals, because heaven forbid they're not.
Yeah, no, they're expected to be the Nations League final. Like it's like when it's like it. We expect it to be USA Mexico again.
Or at least in the semis, right?
If they meet Mexico in the semis, or for example, then yeah, it's a thing. But
I don't care who they meet in the semis, but if they don't make it to the semis, if like they don't qualify, if out of a 3-team group, El Salvador or Grenada manages to qualify over the US, there's a completely different conversation that we're having. And we have to have a different examination of this stuff. I don't care if they go to El Salvador and draw. That's kind of to be expected. You know, I talked to a lot of El Salvadorians who are big football fans, and they said, you know, we have so many disadvantages that we deal with. The size of the country, the economics, the political stability. You know, for us, showing up and competing against a team like the US is golden. We get up for those games not because we necessarily hate the US, but it's like the one chance that we have to actually like show something is in games like this, because otherwise, what are we doing?
It's their Super Bowl. It really is. Like when the games against the US and Mexico is like the one game where they want to go all out because they want to see how they measure themselves against. They want to see. It's a good barometer. Like if we can keep the score low, can we get a goal on them? You know, can we even get 3 points in the match? Like that's what they care about. But like, you know, we're not gonna learn much, because I don't know how much Berhalter is going to really use these Nation League games as a test to, like, you know, to see how the U.S. will play at a World Cup. I mean, to be honest, you know, nobody wants to play these games. You know, they're a headache, because especially the ones who like the Pulisic's and the McKinneys who are, have to go back to club. It's like a month away. In a month, training like the camp starts, and then they have to. I think for Pulisic and some other, they have to go travel, like to December tours. They're like, get me out of here. I don't want to go to El Salvador. Like, I want to go home and rest and hang out on the boat.
The other thing about it, and I know they want to rest, but the other thing about it is, man, like, you're going to have to play in hostile places and hostile crowds in less than ideal conditions when you get over to Qatar. Show up and learn how to play this game. This is the last time that we don't want to try and expand the player pool any more than it's already been expanding. What I need him to start doing is putting the fine touches on what the roster, what the style of play, what the formations are going to be, what are our options. And this is as competitive a game as you're going to get prior to the World Cup, right? No disrespect to Morocco or Uruguay. Those were friendlies, right? This is a competitive match against a team that is actually trying to win because it is a competitive fixture. I know you may not want to play. I know you may not want to travel. But this is that litmus test, right? I'll learn more from who shows up and who plays that game than who doesn't, right? If they are able to show up and play, because then I'll know, like, okay, we have a chance. If they're like, nah, you know what? I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to travel. I got to go back to my club and stuff like that before the season. I want my vacation before the season starts. That's the type of stuff that portends negative things when we get into the World Cup.
I mean, I can see that point of view, but for some of these players, we know what we have with them. Like, I don't need to see like McKinney and Pulisic in this necessarily way. Some players I want to see more of Joe Scally. I want to see more of the defensive center back pairing with Long and TCV, or freaking Eric Palmer Brown. I want to see more, maybe even Bello, but probably not. I know Yetland. I would love to see Ethan Horvath get some time because look, and this transitioning a little bit to the keepers, potentially the three keepers going to Qatar, none of them will be a starting keeper.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be Stefan potentially at the bench at City, Turner at the bench at Arsenal, and Horvath after what Samba did, coming up to get promoted. Horvath will be, and Forrest, but on the bench. Do you really want that? I mean, nobody wants that, but so I want to see more of them playing, getting more minutes, getting more reps, getting more used to potentially the center backs that will be at the World Cup.
That's another thing. I get that, and I could see playing substitutions, right? You got 2 games, let them travel, let them play, give Pulisic and those guys a half in one game, and sub them out, and then sit them. I'm not releasing players to go back because they want a vacation. If you're with the team, you're with the team until the training camp ends, unless there's a very valid reason for you not to. But what did you see on the field this week in games against Morocco and Uruguay?
I saw Brendan Aronson being just a great upcoming player. I think he's going to be a gem in the Premier League. I saw Jesus Ferreira doing 95% of the job he's supposed to do. Well, maybe not 90%, because the 10% is like, he needs to score goals. I saw Walker Zimmerman just continue to play amazing. Like, he starts. He's a starting center back. He is for the US. But now the question is who goes next to him. Is it going to be, I would like it to be Chris Richards, but he needs to come back and play. I need to see him in the September friendlies. Aaron Long did okay. I think, I always see Aaron Long and Zimmerman as sort of the same player. I would love to see more. I want to see kind of a traditional center back, but also paired with a passing center back, which is why I would love to have John Brooks in camp here. But that's a whole different story that Greg Berhalter will never answer. It's like the Sopranos ending. We will never find out what happened with them. But no, look, they're friendlies. And Morocco put on, had a good performance. They had a good crowd that supported them. When's the last time Morocco came to the U.S.? Everyone who came, who is from Morocco or the child of a Moroccan parents, they came to this game because they may not have been back for a while, so they came. This is their game. So, the crowd was one thing, but. The game against Uruguay was interesting because while Uruguay had their chances, they didn't score. I know they didn't start Cavani and the Suarez didn't play, but that whole roster is really good. And when to hold them 0-0, to hold up to 0 goals it's an accomplishment. It would have been better if they scored a goal. But it's Uruguay. They're going to take these games seriously anyways. It's who they are. They play this game for fun.
They also destroyed Mexico a couple of days
ago. Oh
yeah.
Oh my goodness. I mean, that was a shellacking if I've seen one. I mean, Mexico had no answers for Cavani at all. I mean, and let's be frank, not many teams in the world do. Okay. After you have a week to prepare for them. They were good friendlies. They were good tests, but now you had such a high, and now you're going to play Grenada. So that's going to be it's going to be so weird. It's going to be really, really weird. It's like lifting up like the 45 pound dumbbells, and then you have to go to a 10.
Again, like I said, we will not learn anything good about the U.S. men's national team from playing Grenada. And I say that to say, no matter what they do, it will either be expected or bad.
Yeah.
If they win this game 7-0, Christian Pulisic has a hat trick. Tim Weah has 2. Brendan Aronson does this amazing bicycle kick and scores a goal. That's what we expected to do.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing you want to look for is you want to look combination plays, familiar reading, what your teammate is going to do. You're going to be able to try a few things, and that's important. That's good to have. Good reps are important, but that's really about it. Just go in, get the goals, have some fun, and then in camp. Especially now that some of the COVID protocols have been scaled back a little bit, because before they were eating in pods, now they're all eating together again. Mm-hmm. So now, they're going into each other's rooms and playing FIFA. So like that type of camaraderie is going to be really important, because come the World Cup, there's going to be no time for that. They're going to leave club. And within like a week and a half or so, they're going to play a game.
Did you know what this USA Grenada game reminds me of? U.S. women's national team against Thailand.
As soon as you said women's national team, that was the first opponent I was thinking of. I didn't even know Grenada had a team. They're known for their track prowess. I mean, they got some runners down there.
They have
playing against St. Lucia.
I'm actually pretty sure that they are not one of the national confederations in CONCACAF that can't play international tournaments. Like, like Curacao can't play because they're a friend, or St. Martin's can't play because they're overseas protectorates.
Right.
which is one of the reasons why I never will list the Gold Cup as a international tournament,
Of course.
because you have international teams
Yes.
that aren't allowed to play
As
in
long as you have
international
Martinique
tournaments.
and Guadeloupe in that tournament does not count anymore.
Yeah. It's also not organized because it's always played in the US, and it is
Mhm.
engineered specifically for the US to play. So
Yes.
it is an exhibition.
Also, if there's a player who's halfway decent who can make any sort of national team squad, who's from Martinique, he's playing for France.
Yes.
He's not playing for Martinique.
But
And the US Virgin Islands. Come on,
Mhm.
man.
and I get it, for these nations, that is a big deal. The CONCACAF Nations League is a big deal. Again,
Yeah,
just
but you know
just-
what? As someone who's from the US Virgin Islands, it's not. It's
Wait, look, the U.S. Virgin Islands, by the way, it's a FIFA member. This is FYI. I mean, I don't know who plays for them, but they are a
Yeah.
FIFA member.
yeah.
but you got to question though whether I don't know enough to know
Yeah.
how seriously they take it down there to know
It
whether
would be it'd be nice to believe that they do. You know, it's I would hope that they would, because you know they are fielding these games, they are playing them. So it'd be nice to hope that they do take it somewhat seriously. They're putting squads together, they're practicing, they're trying to be somewhat competitive. So yeah, you hope they do take it seriously.
we know, for example, like countries like Andorra and Gibraltar take it seriously enough because they fought to become members of UEFA and FIFA.
Right.
Like they went through that process. So clearly there's at least enough there that they're like, we are actually going to undertake this. Somebody cares enough. And I respect the fact that, you know, Grenada, Haiti, those places have
Mhm.
gotten to the point where they can play these games and be
Yeah.
so give them their time in the sun,
Yeah.
let them
Well,
be competitive.
We've talked about Haiti. If their political and the economic situation wasn't what it was, there's no reason to believe that they couldn't be competitive in North America. Because the athletic talent that comes out of the western half of that island is absolutely phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal.
It's the same thing with Cuba, though. I
Mhm.
mean, if they, you know, you look at that island that is able to produce that many athletes as
Mhm.
much as they do,
Right.
yeah, if they had the funding and the wherewithal and the political stability to field enough to field proper teams,
Mhm.
they'd probably be more successful. You know, how much resources do you have though on an island like Grenada
Yeah.
to devote to, which
Yeah.
radical solution, but maybe cricket has it right.
Dude, I was just thinking that. I was sitting here going, you know, and I've thought this periodically for a very long time, is you're looking at a large number of island nations that do share very strong historical and cultural ties. And, you know, when you go, yeah, they have their own independence, but they're very well connected with their history. And if there was a West Indian national football team, I think that would be a way better thing to go about this than having a bunch of countries. Like, let's take St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I mean, that country has like 40,000 people. So if you have nations that can fit inside of Jerry World in Dallas, the entire nation's population can do it. Not everybody's going to be Iceland. It's a good idea to think about that possibility. Yeah, I think cricket in this situation, they got it right. I really think they do. And you could see a bunch of nations coming together and doing that. Maybe exclude Jamaica because they've actually had some competitive ability in soccer, but I think it's a good idea. I think it's a really good idea.
The problem that they found in cricket, though, is like when they do get the teams, factions form around countries, that they do have problems. There are linguistic and cultural differences. The other problem is if I can't get 3 people to agree on a single pizza topping, how am I going to get 15 independent countries to agree on any damn thing?
Yeah, but
in theory, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, they've also won 2 Cricket World Cups.
Yeah, but they did.
I get it, but they've
won more. They've won 2 Cricket World Cups and they've won a couple of T20 World Cups. They have
but they're competitive.
Yeah.
Right now, they're not competitive. they're not competitive. The soccer teams are not. They're not competitive.
They're
They're
not
not.
competitive, and it's
You
the
look at
same-
the ABC islands down that used to be Dutch protectorates, of Aruba and Bonaire and Curacao. They should, come together. It's so weird because depending on the sport you're talking about and the organization that's hosting the games, you see different nations just somehow come together for various sports. Look at athletics. England doesn't compete in athletics. Great Britain does. So it depends on what you're doing. I'm saying it's not out of the realm of possibility, nor should it be out of the realm of discussion.
And what I was saying was highlighting some of the difficulties with it.
Mhm.
But I do believe, and I've also heard from people who are soccer fans in the Caribbean who are like, if we had a Pan-Caribbean team,
Right.
do you know, like that team would automatically slot in
Mm-hmm.
as probably number 2 in CONCACAF, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they would give, on the best of days, they would give the US easily a run for their money.
Mm-hmm.
They would do that. Now, gentlemen, before we leave, and we're going to run out of time.
Wait, okay.
Oh,
One thing.
Hmm.
I hate to pull a Chelsea mic, but one thing. Big match tomorrow. Australia versus the UAE. The winner plays Peru on Monday for the last spot in the World Cup. Once again, Peru is leaving it up to the last possible day to qualify for the World Cup. So tomorrow will be a fun treat. But then Monday, get the pollo a la brasa, get the arroz chafa, the anticuchos, your Inca Cola, and your Cusqueña, and come celebrate with the Peruvians. Come Monday, let's do it.
All right. I wasn't going to actually end the show. I was going to say before we run out of time.
Oh, well, there you go.
I want to make sure I talk about this situation that's going on in Canada. And I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but Canada had waited and waited and waited and waited and waited to schedule a friendly for this window. Not 2 like the US, just any. And by the time they got around to it, the only team that they could come up with was Iran. Now, the problem was back in 2020, the Iranian Republican Guard shot down that Ukraine air flight outside of Tehran, and like 85 of the 167 people on board were either Canadian citizens or residents, right? So more than half the people on that flight were in some way tied to Canada. And the Canadian FA decided to pay Iran $400,000 to defray their travel costs to come over and play Canada. So as you can imagine, the announcement of the Canadian national team playing Iran was met with less than enthusiasm. About a week ago, Canada mysteriously backed out of this friendly with Iran, giving no apparent reason, and rescheduled their Sunday friendly for Panama. But that didn't get played either because their team went on strike because they do not have a bargaining agreement with the Canadian FA over bonuses. The men's and women's team are asking for equal shares of all the World Cup bonuses. They're estimating that they want 60% of the minimum $10 million that they expect to get in bonuses to be divided equally amongst the FA or amongst the men's and women's teams, sort of similar to what the US men and women are doing. Now, to put it in perspective, the US men and women are dividing 90%, not 60. According to the Canadian men, they had opened up and approached the Canadian FA about negotiating these bonuses right after they qualified for the World Cup in March. And they were told that people were on vacation, that they were unavailable, that they were traveling, and no one got back to them until the Tuesday before this game. So like June 1st. they decided that they were going to get back to them. So they are currently on strike. They refused to play Panama. They have not trained in this window. The Canadian FA is saying that they offered a fair amount. The players are saying that they want more. They said that the FA offered them only 10%, plus they are only offering 2 tickets to any match that Canada plays in the World Cup for friends and family, and they will not pay for any lodging, travel, or anything over to Qatar. So, needless to say, the Canadian men who have been doing this basically for free because they really have had problems, and the Canadian FA is apparently as disorganized as they come, which also concerns me a little bit because Victor Montellano, who's the president of CONCACAF, is the former president of the Canadian FA. Instead, what do you make of this?
I think the Canadian FA is shooting themselves in the foot right now. They really are. This is terrible. This is terrible. Canada is a rich country. They have a 30 million plus population. And, I'm sure the Canadian national team's men's national team is saying, do you put the hockey team through this? I mean, say what you want. This looks really, really bad. This is a chance for Canada to slide in as another player in CONCACAF when historically they've only been 2 teams. This is a chance for them to actually show their ever-increasing immigrant population that we support and love this game. And you're canceling 2 friendlies because you just don't want to pay the players what they've earned.
Well, okay, so they canceled.
I know there's more to it than that, but still, but that's what the lay Canadian fan's probably going to think.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so the Iran game was canceled because that was a boondoggle to begin with. They canceled. The only friendly they canceled because they didn't want to pay the players was actually the Panama one.
Yeah. Well, wait until you're going to see lots of YouTube videos on this whole thing. This is going to get bad. It really is. But this is the kind of stuff you'd see from. I'm not being disrespectful to these nations, but these are the types of things you saw from Zaire back in the 70s, from Cameroon in the Brazil World Cup, where players were, but that's not Canada. That's not a donor nation. And I just think this reflects very, very, very poorly on the Canadian FA. It really does. You're canceling games because of your inability to actually have a properly run association where you can get players on the field to put on your colors and play. Like, the World Cup is in 5 months?
Mm-hmm. How they haven't had,
how are you figuring this out yet? Especially when
that's my thing.
And also, you were the first team from North America to qualify.
Well, there's a small update, by the way. Small update.
Well, I'm totally gonna hit this over to you, Rob. I'm just saying it's shocking from someone who was unaware. I was unaware about the situation in Canada till literally like yesterday, and to think that this is a team that qualified for the World Cup a long time ago and were the dominant team in qualification for this cycle, to be in this situation is beyond shocking to me. But Rob, go ahead.
So the small update is, and it's an official quote from Canada. Canada soccer senior leaders and the men's national team players met on Sunday night to continue the negotiation process. The players will train this afternoon, which is today, with further meetings scheduled towards a resolution. So what that means is that they got the game coming up on Thursday, which I believe is Nations League. Friendlies are one thing, but Nation League, which is an official CONCACAF, competition, is a whole new thing. So it looks like they're going to play. At least they're talking. But instead, this is a stupid problem to have. It really is. It's like I remember in the scene in Bad Boys 2 where the drug dealer had all these bills in a room in an attic, and the rats were eating the bills. It's a stupid problem to have. It really is. And so they need to figure this out, because you do not want this to linger on into the World Cup, because then it become a whole thing. Then you're going to potentially ask the players, like, look, the players are human beings. If the players could go out there and play, but are they going to give it all when they had this to worry about? Probably not. So nip this in the bud, figure it out. You have money, dole it out appropriately, and put this thing to bed, because you do not want it to get ugly. You do not want to get to the point where potentially the players will say, you know what, F Nations League, we'll set this one out too, and Canada will get the L, and then it becomes a whole new thing. No, just figure it out. Everyone's a big boy here, and then pay the money, come to the agreement. The U.S. Soccer Federation, I'm shocked to say this, but has now set a sort of a precedent on this side of the globe and how to handle these negotiations. Use them in a bottle, talk it out, and then finish it. Be done with it, and look forward to this glorified friendly that we call the Nations League. That's it.
And I definitely don't want to. Okay, let me preface again what I'm about to say by saying I am not having a go at the Canadian men's national team or the Canadian women's national team. I believe them to be very, very quality teams, right? I am going to have a go at the Canadian FA that I believe has reflected that they have some issues. I'm also going to compound this by this. The Canadian FA has struggled to release a jersey for public sale.
Say that again?
You can't buy Canada national team jerseys.
That's what I thought you said. And even though in every major city in Canada, those jerseys should be flying off the shelf. And Rob, is what you said, which I wholeheartedly agree with. They have the best player in CONCACAF. Plays for your national team. They have the best player. Who, yeah, he's been injured recently. It's still, there really isn't a question. He's the best player. And you're not selling his jersey?
You can't.
You gotta be kidding me.
So where have you been looking, Michael? Because, I mean, I don't
No,
mean to,
I've been, I mean, but
I don't mean to correct you here, but all right, where have you been?
where did you find one?
So CanadaSoccerStore.com, which is it's a fanatics shop of Canada.
But I'm saying for major public consumption
Yeah,
outside
well,
of
I mean, do you want authentics or replicas?
no, but I'm saying outside of what's the one store that CanadaFanshop.com?
No, this is CanadaSoccerStore.com.
You should be
Canada
able to find him in Dick's, man. Come on.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it
Outside
should
of
be
Canada
everywhere. It should be
Soccerstore.com,
everywhere.
they've struggled to get them on the retailers that most people outside of Canada.
Look, I can still buy a Samuel Eto'o jersey. So
You can go on I mean, you can go on Nike, you can go on Fanatics, you can go on World Soccer Shop, you can go on any number of retailers and buy a Nigeria jersey. You can buy a Morocco jersey. You can buy a Germany jersey off of Adidas.
Mhm.
I'm not saying that, Rob, that you can't get one. I'm saying that they've really struggled to make them widely available in the way that they should. And it is kind of ridiculous that they've struggled as much as they have to get them into a lot of major online retailers.
Whenever you get it, get the third black kit, because it's actually the most beautiful of them all.
It really is. It's an amazing kit. And if I could find one that didn't require me to order them from a CanadaSellsContacts.com, I would be happy to get it, because at this point in time, I don't know if I'm getting any. And when you say, do I want a replica or a real one? I want something that's real. I don't want something that was made in somebody's shop in breakneck Vietnam.
No. When I say a replica or an authentic, so there's a very clear difference. So an authentic is the one that are tighter. The one.
No, what I'm talking about is I want an authentic. I don't care about the player version versus the fan version.
Yeah,
what I don't want is the one that you sell on the street for $20 that somebody replicated in their basement.
Yeah. Understood.
And that's what I get off of. I can go on any retailer on eBay or Etsy or t-shirts.com and get one of those. If I'm going to get the jersey, I want the jersey because you know what the problem with those is? And I'm not going to lie. I've had a couple of them. I wear them for one game, and then, you know, Alfonso Davies scores and I cheer, and like the whole entire left side of the jersey rips off. And now I got no shirt on.
Well,
I got to go home.
Well, if I find it for you, Michael, do I get a cookie?
If you find it for me, I may be able to convince Sonia to make you a platter of mac and cheese.
Oh, dude, love me a good mac and cheese. How many cheeses do you do? 3, 4?
I don't do it. You got to talk to her about that. But
Okay.
that stuff is legendary.
I will talk to the queen one day. We'll discuss recipes.
All right, gentlemen. It has been a lot of fun. We're going to head out and wrap up for the evening. We'll be back at it next week when Rob will give us the update on the success and hopeful qualification of Peru.
I need them to qualify. I really do. I'm going. I have to. Look. Thank goodness we don't do the show right after the game, because I might still be bawling in tears of joy or tears of sadness, but I will be crying.
All right. So I want to thank Professor Matt and Chelsea Mike for coming on, giving us the Ukraine perspective earlier. I know it was a rough weekend for Celtic Cam, but he was able to come on and talk to us a little bit about what happened to Scotland and where they go from there. And of course, our good friend, Peruvian Tito. I had to check his name real quick because I don't know what it is. Byron Rob coming on, talking a little bit about Peru, Canada, and the U.S. men's national team with us. So thank you very much, gentlemen. And of course, it wouldn't be a show without producer Stead. Keeping trains running on time, giving us his wit and wisdom as always. Gentlemen, it has been a lot of fun. We did all right this week. We'll try and do better next week. For the cast of the Too Many Guys Soccer Show, I am Mike, and have a great week.